in charge. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Thank you to all of our panelists and my co-hosts, my two GRiT ambassadors. Thank you to Josh Cleve, our director, for getting this off the ground. Thank you to Katrina Hayes for our spectacular visuals and promoting us on all of the socials. She makes everything look amazing. Tonight, we're going to talk about some issues that are very near and dear, not only to me, but also to those who will be speaking tonight. The world of cycling is rapidly diversifying and it's becoming more and more inclusive. And in that vein, we have a lot to celebrate, and we have some very valid reasons for patting ourselves on the back, giving each other virtual high fives, soon to be real high fives, hopefully. But we still have a long ways to go. We have many aspiring cyclists who do not see themselves in the cycling world for a whole variety of reasons. GRiT as a program focuses on making the sport more accessible and welcoming to female identifying athletes and coaches, as well as to retaining them. So throughout this month, we've been celebrating Women's History Month by hearing from all areas of the cycling world: competitors, professionals in the cycling industry, outreach programs for underrepresented cyclists. Tonight, we're going to hear from three amazing women. They're kind of all over the board, which is different from what we've had all of the other nights. They're going to share their stories with us, tell us about their journey, what attracted them to cycling, what barriers they faced, how they overcame them. They'll share some suggestions for our listeners to help them make the wonderful world of cycling more accessible to everyone. So thank you again to everyone for being here and listening. Your presence tonight shows us that you believe in our mission to get more girls on bikes. And it's my hope that you'll walk away tonight having learned something new and having acquired some tools that will help you help us in achieving our mission. So I would like to turn it over to my co-hosts briefly to introduce themselves. So Alana, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Alana Moe. This is my second year as a GRiT ambassador. I've been riding bikes for 6 years and I've been racing for 4, and I'm really excited for the panel tonight.
Awesome, thank you. So Alana's going to be taking charge of some of the behind the scenes stuff to help this all run smoothly. And then we also have Elizabeth.
Hi everybody, my name is Elizabeth E. I'm 17 years old and I've been racing my bike for I think 6 or 7 years, and this is my second year as a GRiT ambassador.
Excellent. So Elizabeth's going to be monitoring the chat stream. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, or there's a little hand raising icon that you can do, or you can just throw your question into the chat, and Elizabeth will either jump in to share your question if it's something that is makes sense to address it right then, or just hold on to it until later when we have some Q&A time. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Martha, our first speaker.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for including me in this. Talking about girls and women on bikes is one of my favorite things to do. So there's nothing else I'd rather be doing tonight. So thank you so much. So I have a little bit of history with the high school league. So I was the GRiT coordinator. Back then it was called Crank Sisters in 2015 and 2016. So I had tons of fun meeting all the girls in the league and doing what we can to increase participation. And then in 2016, I also submitted an application to start the first Little Bellas chapter in Minnesota. And for those of you who don't know, Little Bellas is a nationwide program that is a mentoring on mountain bike program for girls 7 to 13. And so it's non-competitive, and we just ride bikes and have fun with girls outside, and it's just super awesome. So it made sense as in working with girls with the high school league, when we were thinking about how do we get more girls to participate, what we found is that we have to find them earlier before they pick other sports or are on a different track. And so Little Bella's made a lot of sense to try to scoop up those girls when they're young and teach them about how awesome mountain biking is and how great it is to be outside and not at your computer screen or anything like that. So Woodbury was the first chapter in 2016, and there was, we sold out with 10 more than what a normal chapter starts with that first year. And then we've been growing ever since. We added a program in Lakeville. We added one up in Cuyuna. We added an older ride program for girls last year for girls 12 to 16. And then we're even branching out to like the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, added a chapter. We're starting one in Detroit, Michigan. There's one in like the Hayward, Wisconsin area. So we're really trying to branch out in lots of different communities to scoop up these girls. I'm super fortunate because I started as just a volunteer working with the Woodbury program. And then as I had more and more experience with Little Bellas, they hired me on part-time. So I was able to actually do it as a job as well. And so I'm honored to be, I'm the regional coordinator for the Midwest. So all those programs I talked to you about launching, I was able to work with those leads and help mentor them through starting their program, be there for the launch, and just make sure everything runs really well. I love that part of my job. And then just as a side note, fun fact, I used to have the the nickname Martha Hen because my teammates would tease me that I'm like, if there's any group, I'm like Martha Hen trying to make sure that everyone stays together and everyone's having fun and no one is excluded. So I kind of like that. In general, I love biking. I started biking when I was 7 years old. I was devastated waiting for 2 years to get that bike because for some reason my dad had this rule that you could learn how to ride a bike when you were 7. And I had a sister 2 years older than me. So I was 5, she was 7, she got her bike and was able to like go all over the neighborhood. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be stuck at home. So I was so excited when I got my first bike and could like annoy her and follow her around the neighborhood. But from 7 until probably my mid 30s, I didn't think about biking as a sport. It was like transportation. It was just something that you had to get to places. I had never heard about riding on the dirt or gravel even. And I did other sports through high school. I ran cross country and track, and then I did inline skating for a while, competed with that. And then in my mid 30s, I started riding just more as cross training and did a couple races here and there. And I just fell in love with the racing community. There was just, it's different than, you go to a running race and people, I don't know, that's just not as friendly. It just didn't feel as much as a community to me. And that was actually when I was inline skating a ton. And so I just decided one year, I'm not going to race on my skates anymore. I'm just going to full in go on to biking. And so I kind of like to do things all in. So the first year when I decided to do biking, I used to have the number memorized, but I did something like 56 races in a year. It was more than 2 a week if you added it up. Because anything I heard about that was a race, I was in and I met so many people that year, through crit racing, road racing. I did cyclocross in the fall, mountain biking, and then I even did some winter races, and that was back I think when only the Pugsley bike was around, and the rest of us just rode our mountain bikes on the trails and just were like falling off into the snow at all times, and it was just so much fun. So I love racing. I'm competitive with myself, but the older that I get, I'm not as competitive, like comparing myself to others, but I try to just do the best that I can. So I've been, just even in the past 5 years, I've switched from races like the Minnesota Mountain Bike Series race, and I've moved more towards kind of those mass start races that are longer. that you are just like trying to better your time or like see how far you can race and that kind of thing. And I really like to do that, where I'm just trying to do hard things and see how I can do with that. But when I first kind of started in the mountain bike community, there were a few people that, you always remember those people that are nice to you when you're new at something. And I remember a racer, Rebecca Sauber. And so when I was just starting and I was, a huge beginner, she was, racing the elite class, and she was like so much faster than me and strong. But she was just a spitfire. She had such a welcoming personality. I just loved it. She'd show up at the start line and she had like bright, I don't wear lipstick, but she had like bright pink lipstick. And she was just like at the start of the race, and she'd finish the race and she'd have the lipstick and then like dirt in her teeth. And it was like so cool to see those differences. But what really impressed me about her is that she raced for a team called LCR. And they kind of have they're known for first of all, they don't have hardly any girls on their team, but all the guys on their team, their big thing is like doing all of the obstacles. And if there's any obstacle, even in a race, like it's a rule that if you're on LCR, you have to do this skinny or you have to do this rock. You can't go around it. And she was on that team and she was super comfortable in her own skin, just like, no, I don't like doing technical stuff. I'm not going to do it. And I remember just looking at her as she's like in the middle of all these like intimidating guys. And she was just like so, had such self-confidence, and like she knew who she was. She knew she liked to race, and this was what was important to her. And so I kind of, she was pretty inspiring as a role model that way. And then when I think about when I started working with Little Bellas, another person that it still inspires me today is our executive director, Sabra Davison. So you might recognize her last name. She's the sister of Leah Davison, who is hopefully soon to be a third-time mountain bike Olympian. And so Sabra and Leah grew up riding bikes together. They were both, elite athletes as juniors in mountain biking, and Sabra did Nordic skiing also. And so they were kind of on that same trajectory of being like super competitive, like this was their life to be a professional athlete. And Sabra at some point just made a decision that that was not her path. And it was around the time when they first started Little Bellas in Vermont, and it was super small. And she said it was like at a point where Little Bellas could stay as this just one program in Vermont, or it could start to grow. And she knew that if she took the professional athlete path, that she wouldn't be able to do this Little Bellas thing. And so she made the choice. Like she had the genetics, like she was up there as an elite athlete, and she made this choice that she could do more by lifting up girls all over. And I almost start to tear up thinking about it, because like you think she could have done that thing for one person, where instead, when you think we have like 51 Little Bellas chapters throughout the country now, and think of all of the girls that she's influenced there, it's just amazing. So I love working. Well, I mean, I just love working for Little Bellas because of the mission and what it is, but also being able to learn from her and work with her is amazing. The other thing that's wonderful about working for Little Bellas is our core team. So, we're all over the country, but we have this core team of all the regional supports and, people that do registration and different things like that. And so we'll have these conference calls once a week to talk through things. And it's such a wonderful culture when we're on the call, because number one, everyone listens to each other. Like there's no interrupting or talking over people. And even to the point where we'll be talking about something and then we'll say, oh, Elizabeth, it looks like you were going to say something. Do you have something to add? We're always trying to draw things out of each other. And the other thing that's wonderful is it's really a culture of trying to learn from your mistakes and be non-judgmental. And so I never feel like, oh my gosh, I messed up. I was supposed to do this and I didn't do it in time. I'm going to be in trouble. There's never that feeling. It's like, oh yeah, you had a lot going on that week. You know, what can I do to help? We're always like jumping in to help each other. And that's just such a positive thing. And it really helps if you're working for a company that has an impactful mission, that like if you're always bringing it back to, we want to do what we can to like support these program leads so that they can have these Little Bellas chapters all over the country. Like if that's what we're always going back to, it's not, I want to look great as the Midwest regional coordinator. No, it's like we want it to be wonderful everywhere. And so it's just a very refreshing work culture that I just love. And I'll even tell you a story about when I was a program lead at the beginning, and it really makes me think of, I don't remember who said this quote, but there's a quote about people don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel. And I definitely had one of those experiences where, so I was a new lead, I was maybe like 2 or 3 years into it even. And there was a girl in the program that we were just having trouble like figuring out how to make this a positive experience for her. And she was struggling and it was impacting like the other girls in her group. And I was frustrated because I didn't know like what I should do to help her. And I just felt like I was failing as a lead. And I remember talking to Saber about it. And the first thing she said was, this is hard. Like, this would be hard for me, you know, and she just like, it just like changed the mood of the conversation completely, that like, I wasn't expected to know everything or be able to solve everything, that like, this was hard and we were going to work through it together to figure out some strategies. And then she even said like, and we might have these strategies and they might not work. Like, we're going to do our best, but like, she even left it out there. You know, that things are hard and we're going to do our best, but we'll see what happens. You know, and for someone, and I don't know if this is a more female thing, but like, I have a lot of perfectionism in me. And so it's really nice to be able to be comfortable not being perfect or not knowing everything. So that's just fabulous. And kind of as you grow in that, it can help you in other situations. So there's times when I might be thrown into, in the biking world, into an intimidating situation. So it might be something like, I'm the only girl that's out on a group ride with my husband and a bunch of his friends, you know, or maybe it's an all-female ride, but I know that I'm the slowest rider. That can be really intimidating. And so a few tips I have to help with that. One is to just own who I am, to know that what I'm capable of. Like, I'm not going to be able to race. Like, my husband is faster than me. I'm not going to be able to keep up with him on a training ride when he's trying to like go all out. So just knowing that, and then like setting expectations for the group. And so there's times when I ride with my husband when I'm like, okay, you're doing this, I'm doing this. Let's just plan for when we're going to meet back at the parking lot, because it's not going to happen that we're riding together. Or it might be a ride that is like, we've talked about that this is a group no drop ride. And so those are the times when I'm going to be like, okay, we said this was no drop. And I'm going to, you know, if people are going off the front, I'm going to say, hey, you need to get, and I mean, I'll be kind of bossy, like, hey, you need to get behind me. I am leading this ride and we are going to sing, because this is like the fun group ride. And so sometimes I just, and it's almost like when you're intimidated, you have to just like, that sometimes makes me even more vocal, that like, I'm going to say what it is. And then, you know, if you guys want to have your, you know, super fast ride, that's great, but we need like, just call it out that that's what it is. And so it's a little bit of a speaking up and not apologizing. And that's what we talk a lot about with Little Bellas. Like when you're riding and like you get kind of, you're a little bit off the back and the group waits for you, like that's a normal ebb and flow of a group ride. And so when you're the person at the back that comes up to the group, if someone says, oh, sorry, it took me so long, we're always like, there's no sorry in little Bella's. You know, you just say thank you for waiting. That like that's such more of a positive thing, because most of the time the people that are waiting, they don't mind having a rest, and they're sitting there talking and, you know, having their snack or whatever. And so just flipping that sorry to thank you is a big thing. So when, especially in biking, I think as things are changing and we're trying to get more and more girls into the high school league or into racing or biking in general, that the men and boys in our community, I think, really want to be allies, and they want to have that that participation increase. The trouble is sometimes, even though they're coming from the best place, it doesn't always feel that like that on the receiving end. And I have two examples to talk about with that. One is I've had times when I've been working on my bike, and it might be something as simple as like pumping up my tire, or, you know, trying to adjust my brake levers or something like that. And I won't confirm or deny that it's my husband that has done this on occasion, but sometimes someone will just barge in and like take over the pump, or like take over, like just take the tool out of my hand and start doing it. And that's again where I have to, like, I'm kind of conflict averse, and so I sometimes want to just not do anything, but I have to like force myself to say, that is not helping me learn how to adjust my brake levers. Like, I know you're trying to help, but that's not the best thing for me. And so just kind of calling that out, and, you know, you can do it in a loud way like that, or you can just take that pump back. You know, either way, it's just asserting for what you need at that moment. And the other example is actually from when I was more involved in the high school league. And I can remember talking with one of the girls at the tent, and she, and for those of you that don't know, for the high school league, it's probably one of the few sports that the team points, like for a team to win, it's a combination of the boys and the girls scores. So if you had a team that only has boys racing, it's pretty rare that they're going to do well on the team scoring if they don't have any girls. If you're a girl racing, hopefully it's better now, but back then, a lot of times, if you just showed up at the starting line, you would get points just because there were so few girls racing. So one of the girls came to the tent and she's like, oh, I'm so frustrated because the guys on my team always just say, just show up. She was like, I'm not sure whether I'm ready to race or not. And all the boys on her team were like, well, just show up. We need your points. Just show up on the line. And she's like, she didn't articulate this completely, but like, to say that, I know that the guys are trying to be there for her. Like, they're trying to tell her that, you know, she doesn't have to be worried. She just shows up and races, but they're not really listening to where she's coming from and what her apprehensions might be about racing. And so it's really that for our male allies out there, listening is super important, or asking questions and not just assuming that you know kind of where someone is coming from. And then my final point, I know I'm going a little bit over my 15 minutes, but like I said, this is my favorite thing to talk about. My final thing I want to talk about is acceptance in biking. And my pet peeve with biking and hanging out with even some of my good friends in biking is there is such, people have such strong opinions about things, like whether you wear flat pedals or clipped in, whether you're wearing baggy shorts or Lycra, you know, what size bike you have. Oh, is it, Judy and I always tease, do we like SRAM? Is SRAM the one we like, or is Shimano the one we like? Because people have like such strong opinions about one or the other. And it's like, why? Let people just ride their bikes, and, you know, you don't have to like take what your strong opinions and just throw them that everyone has to do this. And we do this thing at Little Bella's at the start of each program. We have this little talk at the start, and it's really to set the ground rules with the girls. So we'll talk about how at Little Bella's having fun is like the most important thing at the program. And then we'll talk about some safety things too. But then I talk about how at Little Bella's, we accept everyone for who they are. We want everyone to feel like they can be themselves at this program, and everyone is unique and has good things to share. And that's what makes a program like Little Bella so awesome. So whoever you are, however you're coming to the program, we encourage it. And then I do the goofy example of, for example, if someone likes to scratch their nose like this, that is just fine. And we're not going to make fun of that person because it probably feels really good when they scratch their nose like that. And so then all the girls laugh at me and it's awesome. But I was doing that talk once and a girl piped up at the end of it and she said, I am so glad that I'm in Little Bella's because when I'm at home, my family laughs they make fun of the way that I laugh. And now I know that I can laugh at Little Bella's and no one is going to make fun of me. And first of all, that kind of broke my heart a little bit. But secondly, like never let someone make you feel bad for the way that you are. And on that positive note, I'm going to be done.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Martha. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that you so deliberately and intentionally go out of your way to set up a positive culture and for the girls before you even really get out there. I mean, because setting that tone is huge. I've noticed that in other areas as well, and in the classroom, coaching, all of that. So that's awesome.
Cool.
And your program always books out. I remember trying to get my daughter in every single year, and one of the other panelists earlier was talking about trying to get her daughter in. So
we're
grow.
strategizing on adding new programs. And if anyone is interested in being a program lead for a new program, just give me a call.
All right. Yes. We'll have to, why don't you throw your email into the chat so people can contact you if they are interested.
Yep.
Okay. And I believe Lynn was going to go next. Is that right? Not Lynn. Sorry.
Lisa.
Lynn was one of our presenters 2 weeks ago. Lisa. Yes, I'm so sorry, Lisa. But Lisa, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us about yourself.
Very good. Well, that's a tough act to follow, Martha. I love hearing all your stories. I'll try to be as interesting and entertaining as you've been. And I love hearing you talk about Little Bella's. My mom's a great role model for me and a very strong woman, but she was part of the first wave feminists. And when I was a kid and had a bike, I wanted to have it, wanted pink or some pink accessories. And, she didn't let me have anything pink. Like if she was, the way to teach a kid girl to be strong was to not let her, gravitate to pink and dolls and things like that. So I had a navy blue bike and I couldn't put any pink stickers on it or anything like that. So if anyone sees me out on the road, every single one of my bikes is either pink or has pink accessories on it. So I like that now we can embrace our feminine side and even in cycling and, be feminine and strong out on the bike. So I love that, Little Bella's. So a little bit about myself and bicycling. I can't think of a time that I didn't love biking. Like I said, my mom was a big influence. My parents, we went for bike rides around Lake Harriet. I have a strong memory of the first time I was strong enough to ride around twice, so, it was, a big accomplishment. Sometimes we'd stop and get ice cream at the concession stand, and I always got pink ice cream, even though I liked the taste of chocolate better. So I guess I got my pink fix that way. Currently, I do a lot of bike commuting. I ride I have a little rule where I try not to take my car out if it's less than 5 miles. So if it's an errand I need to run, or if I'm going to work, I try to ride my bike everywhere I go. Not always in the middle of the winter, although I do have a winter bike. I do a lot of road cycling. I've been a member of bike clubs for probably 30 years, the Ann Arbor Bike Touring Society and then 20 years in the Twin Cities Bike Touring Society. Been on the board of the TCBC. I did do a lot of mountain biking through the 90s. mountain biking was first getting to be popular around then. And so a lot of the people I knew were mountain biking. And so I did a lot of mountain biking then, did a few races, and I did some big trips to Colorado. Yeah, and I'll just say about bicycling, it kind of, what type of biking I do sort of ebbs and flows based on what's going on in my life, who I'm hanging out with. And there's so many different types of bicycling. You can really do it all your life, and there's new things to try on bicycling, so you can always try new things. So those of you that are mountain biking and racing now, you might do something different when you're older, and you might come back to mountain biking in the future. I myself just got a fat bike, and I'm hoping to start up at least doing some easy mountain biking again when the trails dry out a little bit. So yeah, it's a great sport, and you can do it forever. Yeah, one of my favorite things to do with bicycling is week-long bike tours. That's just leaving the car and being on your bike for the whole week. These tours are organized where you ride town to town, and a lot of them haul your gear for you. So it's just and somebody else plans the route and feeds you. So you just get to be on your bike with your friends all day for a whole week. So yeah, times I've gone on business trips or traveled, I somehow find a way to rent a bike, in Paris or in Sydney or, wherever I am. I always try to see the world on a bike. So I could go on and on too, Martha. It's like, I love talking about bicycling, and I just can't imagine life without a bicycle. And I think as if I get old enough that I need a three-wheeled bike or an electric bike, I believe I'll be able to do it my whole life. So, but yeah, I identify a lot with bicycling. In addition to riding, I've done a lot of volunteer work and advocacy with bicycling. I think I mentioned that I was on the Twin Cities Bicycling Club board. I've also served on the Department of Transportation for a while, had a state bicycle advisory committee where citizens could advise the DOT on bike needs. And for me, that ended up turning into a job. Much like Martha, I was very lucky to be able to do bicycling work as a profession for a while. I don't do as much of that anymore, but for probably a good decade, I was doing a lot of bicycle work for the Department of Transportation. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the things I did with that later on, but first I'll just mention a few mentors and role models I've had over the time. If you think of all the different types of cycling I've done, there's been a lot of people that have influenced me over the years. Obviously first my parents, both my mom, who was a strong woman and encouraged me to bike, but also my dad. I have such strong memories of riding with him in the mornings, going out for rides with him. So they were a big part of getting me into cycling. I'd say there was a boyfriend in college who really was interested in doing long distance bike rides, and he got me kind of interested in riding long distances. And then it's not somebody I knew, but I read an article in the newspaper about a woman who had ridden in RAGBRAI, and that's a week-long bike tour in Iowa, the Register's annual great bike ride across Iowa. And just the article just made it sound like so much fun. And this was in the early 80s. So, back then bicycling was even more of a male dominated sport. And to read this story in the newspaper about a woman who'd done this week-long tour, I was like, I want to do that someday. So, and eventually I did. I think it might've been 92 or 93 by the time I did the RAGBRAI ride. But, even though I didn't meet her, she was a big role model for me. I had a group of friends that were real great at inspiring me to mountain bike. It was mostly guys, but, they were really great at encouraging me to ride and, just, helping me get over my fears and teaching me some of the techniques. So that was really fun to get involved with mountain biking. When I got into bike advocacy, Mary Nelson-Stoon, who is on the call today, I see your name, Mary, was a big influence and a good role model for how to be a good bike advocate. She would have an idea and see something that needed to get done, and just keep pushing for it till we accomplished some things. So it was good to see how she conducted herself in that advocacy role. And then when I got into professional cycling, professional work as a bicyclist, bike professional, I had a strong mentor, Daryl Anderson, who worked for the Department of Transportation, and saw that spark in me and saw that I had the aptitude to get into government work and trying to make things better for cyclists in the infrastructure, bike trails, and bike lanes and bike laws and things like that. So he really encouraged me and recruited me to apply for the job at the DOT and gave me opportunities to build my skills. So lots of people have helped me along the way. And Josh, you're on the phone there too. I remember when you encouraged me to do the triathlon. So, I don't, for about a decade, I said I wanted to do a triathlon, and Josh called my bluff and said, hey, let's do one. So we trained and got that done. So throughout your life, you can have lots of role models and mentors if you pay attention and listen to and leave yourself open to trying new things. One of the other things that we were asked to talk about was some of our challenges that we faced as a woman and with bicycling. I guess one of the first ones for me is bike fit. My first road bike was too big and my arms were like stretched out, and we had to do all these things to try to get the stem in the right place, but it was still kind of a too big bike. My next road bike was too small, and I was kind of crunched up, and the stand over height was okay, but I don't know, it was just difficult. It didn't handle quite as well as it should have. So I ultimately had a custom road bike made, a Waterford, and that one fits pretty well. But bikes are traditionally, as we all know, meant for male bodies, and I think things are starting to get a little bit better. But that's that's a challenge. And then, one of the other questions was talking about microaggressions, and you start thinking about that, and it's like I could talk for hours about all the little things that have happened to me, and I'll just give a couple examples just to acknowledge this stuff happens, right? I mean, we have to talk about it. This stuff happens. I remember when I was probably in my early 20s, there was a guy that I really looked up to in the church, a man that I really looked up to in the church I was going to, and I was proud about, somewhere I'd ridden, I was talking about that, and he just looks at me and goes, "Why do you want a bike? Your thighs are going to get big." So, that could have cut me off right there to I was mortified, like, wow, you want to be an attractive woman. And it's like, that could have really discouraged me. There was a company I worked for that I commuted on bike to work, and I was kind of made fun of when I would arrive in my spandex. Yet the men that rode to work, that was okay. They supported, or at least didn't make fun of the men that walked in with their, it was about a 15, 16-mile ride to work. So I was, you kind of had to wear bike clothes to get there so you weren't sweaty. There was another thing that happened. Oh, this was probably, these things stick out in your mind. They're things you remember your whole life. There was another time I was organizing a spin class in the winter for me and a bunch of my coworkers, and it was mostly men, a couple of other women, and the spin instructor was just awful. I mean, this spin instructor, said really inappropriate things. He would say to the women, like, "Come on, work harder. You want that bikini body. Summer's coming," and just really degraded the women in the class. And I was really uncomfortable with it. But all the men that worked, they worked with me, they loved this instructor. And, when I would say, like, this is, I'm offended by this, they just kind of blow me off. And they went even so far. We had an opportunity to have a woman instructor who was a much better instructor. She actually, gave better, instructions while you were spinning, showed you how to do some of the moves and made sure you were safely, doing the spinning class. We had a chance to have her instead. And some of the guys said that they would quit or wouldn't sign up for the next session unless that guy was the instructor. And it's like, I was the one that organized it. So here's it's a lot of work to schedule it, to collect all their money, to nag them to give me their money. And it's like, and they still, said they were going to quit if they didn't have their guy instructor. So yeah, I quit organizing the class for those guys, but that was, it's just such disrespect. Yeah, helped just a couple other ones. I'm still really intimidated to go into a bike shop. Maybe it's, well, even recently I was standing curbside waiting for help, and, there's not a a line like we used to have, because you have to have 6 feet apart. But I was obviously the next person that was closest to where they were calling people up. And the guy comes out to curbside, he looks right past me and says to the guy sort of behind me, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, at least the guy behind me is like, "I think she's next," but I guess, did they just assume I was with my boyfriend or husband and so I couldn't possibly be there on my own? I don't know. I mean, it just happens all the time, right? And my anxiety about it is probably accumulative. I remember one of the times I was looking for a high-end road bike. I do a lot of road biking. This clerk would not even show me road bikes. He kept telling me, "No, this is the bike you want. You want this hybrid commuter style bike," and I'm like, he was, again, to Martha, to your point, he probably thought he was helping because he was probably taught in some, how to sell a bike to women class that women don't like road bikes. And, so maybe most of the women that came into the shop would have preferred that bike, but I knew what I wanted. And no matter what I said, he wouldn't show me the high-end road bikes that I wanted to look at. So, these things are tough. The microaggressions are out there, this stuff happens. And I guess, when it's appropriate, I call people out on it. And when I don't have the energy to do that, or if it's a situation that's not appropriate, I just try to let it roll off my back. I mean, it certainly hasn't stopped me from cycling and enjoying the sport. But, I think, we need to acknowledge that it happens and support each other. And I guess I'll say too, that we live in a male-dominated society, and the patriarchy isn't just in cycling. If we can learn how to manage these situations in the cycling world, we'll be able, we can handle it in any work situation or any other situation in our culture. I mean, it's just, it's part of the world we live in right now. And then when I reflect on this, I think because we all experience these things, it's really important for women to support each other. And, I know as I've gotten older, I sometimes feel ageism on top of the sexism. I did a ride out of a shop where I didn't really know any of the other riders, but they were a little bit younger and I just felt like they were probably going to want to go faster. They said it was a no drop ride, but I said, hey, if you give me a map, I'll just meet you guys up at the, at the rest area, because they were going to stop partway through. And I was treated like I was a beginner cyclist that didn't know what I was doing. And it's like, well, yeah, I'm a little older. I'm not as fast as all you, but I'm not, this isn't my first 50-mile bike ride. Like, if you give me a map, I'm going to be self-sufficient. So it's just, thinking about how we can support each other, and thinking about thinking about ageism, and I think because we've experienced this as women, we can see it, we can probably empathize better with other marginalized groups, because it's the way we're treated isn't so different than people of color or somebody with a disability. So I know for me, it helps me kind of think about what it must be like for somebody else that's not, part of the dominant culture, or part of the part of the dominant culture. So when I see other people being excluded, I try to think, well, that's what it must feel like, and help make a difference for everybody. So yeah, those microaggressions exist, and now I'll switch to thinking of ways to make things better. In the early 2000s, I really wanted to try to help more people get into bicycling, and the League of American Cyclists had a curriculum where you went to like a 3 or 4 day course where you went all day, 8 hours a day for 3 or 4 days, and you could become a certified instructor. So I went and I got my certification. And, the training for the most part was really excellent. It was very comprehensive. It taught you how to ride. It taught you how to ride in traffic. You learned about bike laws. You learned about some basic bike mechanics and bike fit and what to wear when cycling. I mean, it was just, really kind of covered all aspects of cycling. So it was really good class in a lot of ways. And they, I had the curriculum that you could use to teach others. but it was written by men and focused on, John Forrester's vehicular cycling program. And, it went a little bit, went so far as to say like bike lanes and bike trails were bad. So that, vehicular cycling was the only way. And we actually were harming bicycling if we, advocated for bike trails. That was kind of John Forrester's philosophy. And then, another, like in the what to wear section, it only talked about spandex, like, oh, this is what you had to wear cycling. That was what the training guide said. And of course, the bike fit section was only about, men. It showed men over road bikes, and how to fit that. So when I got my certification, it was a good base, but I wanted to adjust it so it didn't intimidate people. I mean, I was teaching the class at community ed, and if you have a bicycling class in community ed, you're not going to get all men who want to, ride hard on the road. You got to, get a lot of women. They, a lot of times if you taught the curriculum the way it was supposed to be, the women wouldn't show up for the second and third night of the class because they'd be like, whoa, this isn't for me. So, when I talked about where I taught people about where to ride, I mean, yes, I would teach people the traffic skills, but I would also talk about, trails and bike lanes were good places to be. And I talked about the concept of, 8 to 80, which, that's kind of a movement now where you say, bicycling should be safe for people that are 8 years old or 80 years old. Is it safe for your kids to bike to school? Is it safe for your grandparents to bike with the kids to school? So, thinking about where to ride and bike safety and infrastructure for all ages. And when I talked about what to wear, I would come in with a skirt on and shoes with laces and, maybe pant legs with, big bell bottoms and, talk about what's safe to wear when you're riding. You don't, the biggest thing is you don't want to get stuff caught in the chain. So I would, talk about all different types of clothing to wear. And then of course, when I talked about bike fit, I'd first talk about, well, the most, you got to think about what kind of riding you want to do. If you want to be a commuter or a road rider or a mountain biker, the type of bike is part of your bike fit. And then, the other things like standover height and how much your knees should be bent or how your arms should be is important too. So that was kind of fun to change that curriculum up to encourage more people to ride. And that gets into what motivates me. I really am motivated by helping other people. And thinking about how I can make a difference. And in my volunteering and advocacy and work in bicycling, I think I've, started a lot of really cool things. And I'm sure that being a woman has added a different perspective to some of that. I'll just list off a couple of things kind of quickly. And if anyone questions, you can ask me later about them. But one of the kind of cool things is, at the DOT, we've counted car traffic for like 100 years. And, in the last 10 or 15 years, we've started to see a lot more bicycles out there. So people go like, wow, there's a lot of bikes. I wonder how many bikes there are on the road. And if you're going to try to design a road with a bike lane or fix your traffic signals so that the bikes don't have to stop and wait at every red light, you kind of want to know how many bicycles are out there. The data is really what helps make decisions. So I was like, well, if we're counting cars, why don't we count bikes? So I helped get a program to count bicycle and pedestrian traffic, and we were one of the first states in the country to do that. So that was pretty cool. I was a big part of getting the Bicycle Alliance in Minnesota started. That's a statewide bicycle advocacy organization. I'd gone as an advocate to Washington, D.C. with a couple other people, and most other states had bicycle advocacy organizations, and Minnesota didn't. So we came back and we got one started, and that was over 10 years ago. Same kind of thing. Mary Nelson and I, recognized that there weren't any week-long or multi-day bike tours that weren't fundraisers in Minnesota. So we started the Bicycling Around Minnesota ride. For a while at MnDOT, I was the Safe Routes to School coordinator. And that's a program to help kids walk and bike to school. And, got quite a few things going with that, like, figuring out a way that we could buy fleets of bicycles for the schools, because that was the biggest barrier for kids learning how to ride, is they didn't have an access to a bike. So, I could go on and on about, trying to, think of all the things you can accomplish. And I just say, if you've got an idea, just do it, like figure out a way to do it. It's one thing to complain about this should be better, that should be better. But if you have an idea, figure out a way to do it. And it's, get a lot of satisfaction out of that, and we can make a big difference. So I hope that helps. I've had a long life of enjoying bicycling, and I hope to do it for many more years. So hopefully that helps. And I've probably gone over my time too. So we want to save a little time for Ariel. I know, Katrina, you're going to introduce her, but I'm excited to hear how the next generation of strong women are going to change cycling even more. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa. That's fantastic. I wish we had time to go back and touch on so many things you said. Especially the image of a woman that's been working out a lot and she's got muscles, and how muscles aren't attractive. It's just so incredibly awful. And I love that you touched on the cross section, the multiple layers of all of the microaggressions. It can be so incredibly exhausting for those people who have it coming from several different directions. So thank you for bringing all of that up. That's fantastic. All right, Ariel, and by the way, we don't have a true time constraint, so don't feel rushed or anything, but Ariel, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us your story.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Ariel Kleczewski. So I have a little bit of a different story. I feel like these other two awesome women were into cycling, and that led to something in their career. And it was really cool how that worked out. I did this the backwards way. I am a mechanical engineer, and I got a really cool job that is at a place called Quality Bicycle Products, where we make bikes. And all of a sudden, I need to ride all the bikes. And it introduced me into the world of cycling, and it's helping me learn this community. So a lot of the stories I have to tell directly related to cycling are really from the last 2 years of my life. But I have a little bit of a different perspective on gender and being the only woman in the room, because I spent most of my career doing that. So, I did biking as a kid a little bit, and I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering, and getting around the University of Minnesota is not easy. And I was like, well, I'm going to buy a bike to get me to and from campus, because that's going to be so much better than driving a car and trying to park. And so that's when I first started to ride a little more. But when I interviewed at QBP, I interviewed for an engineering supervisor position, because I've been managing design engineers for a few years. And in the interview, they said, well, if you could only buy one bike for the next 5 years, what bike would it be? And I said, I've only had one bike for the last 10 years. And they looked a little horrified, but we talked about it. And fortunately, I got a chance, and it's a great way to work. I think it's been interesting for me, because I have had so many incredibly positive experiences now that I'm part of the cycling community. And QBP has been a wonderful place to work as a woman in engineering. And that's been really new and wonderful for me in my career. Being a woman in engineering can be really lonely. And sometimes you just are the only woman in the room. And I used to keep count of like meetings where I think some of my highest were in the 20s, of it was 20 dudes and me. And in many cases, most of them were 20 or more years older than me. So it felt very strange. And people I found in my career, they were really comfortable with me when I was brand new, and they looked at me like their daughter. But then once I got good at what I did and built experience and got into a leadership role, it became a whole lot harder to get people to listen to me and treat me with the same kind of respect. We talked about role models before this session, and I sat and I was just like, I've got nothing. I was like, who in my career has been a role model? I don't know. I never saw a woman doing what I do. And And it's weird to realize that that void was there. But I had this really wonderful experience a couple weeks ago. We had an engineer who was leaving our organization because he was moving, and we did an exit interview to talk about what was, just what we're doing good, what we can improve. And he said, Ariel, I have 2 daughters, and I'm so happy that there are people like you to be role models for them. And that hit me really hard. And I take that responsibility incredibly seriously. And I think that's the most rewarding thing I get out of what I do, is the idea that I'm blazing a path for other women to do both engineering and doing work in the cycling industry. At the beginning of my career, I was intimidated a whole lot. And something in me is just really stubborn. So I kept showing up. And I felt like a fool, or I felt discouraged, or I felt embarrassed. But something kept me just showing up the next day. And then I have had time now and perspective. I realized that none of those dudes knew any more than I did. They just didn't feel bad about it. And it's just showing up and trying can be so powerful, and not quitting. And I had an experience with one of the engineers I work with who said, wow, I would really like to learn more, because this other engineer, wow, that guy is great at all the lab testing and really knows what's up. And I just don't, and I don't know how to get in there and learn it. And I explained, I've been having like 6 weeks of one-on-ones with this other engineer I put this together and it didn't work. And then I lost this, and then I had to buy something new because I broke it. And it's gone on. And I said, that person does not know any more than you do. They just keep putting crap together to see if it'll work or not. So I don't know. Don't let people make you feel stupid, I guess, is the message there, because you're probably not. You're probably doing really well. Other motivation things that I think about being in the world that I'm in, it's so important to recognize how much you've done. And I think that sometimes our society makes it difficult for women to congratulate themselves, or to say, hey, I did something really tough. Yeah, that was awesome. And we minimize our achievements. And I found myself doing this recently. I just started mountain biking in the past year. So last summer, and I was like, this is amazing. This is so fun. And I am getting past, like, I'm standing still by 6-year-olds, but I'm having a blast. So that was great. And I was talking to one of my coworkers about the experience, or something I learned about, center of gravity and weight distribution and how it's important. And I said, but, I was getting passed by little kids. Like, I'm so slow. I can't really be the person. I don't know what it's really like. And he said to me, think about how much more you've done than like 90% of the population, just because you were out there. And that meant so much to me. And I think that was a great message. Like, recognize how much you've done just being out there and getting on the trail and riding and having a good time. And that all matters. And it's meaningful. And I think that does help me keep motivated when I realize, oh, wow, I have made progress. I have achieved some things. So Lisa talked a little bit about fit, and this is something that is very close to my heart and an ongoing battle that I have with some of my coworkers sometimes about fit. So there's a lot of fit data used in the cycling industry when we design frames. And I found out near the beginning of my time that a whole lot of that fit data is based on Italian men in the 70s. I mean, it's not that it's just dudes, it's the only Italian dudes in the 1970s. And we think this is representative of like the entire perspective of humanity. I am not buying into it. So then there's some more data about fit that's it, and then I find out, well, that's all from people in the Army, which is a sample that is broader than Italian men in the 70s, but I still think we're probably not reaching a complete cross section. And it's something that I really want us to do better. And I bring up a lot of comments in these discussions. So I have I have colleagues that have told me, like, well, you just design for the average person because, you know, studies have shown that the middle of the data, the middle of the bell curve is really the same. And I don't think that's true. For one, I told him to show me the money, and I have not seen any numbers on this. But also, it's just, even if we're the same size, I have a coworker who is the same height as me, exactly. And he rides a 52. And I ride a 46. And part of it is because our bikes have terrible standover. So like I could not stand over a 52 at all. But it's something that is such a blind spot for the industry. I think when you only have, I was like, how is the average height of employees in my company like 6 foot tall? Like, this is crazy. And they're just all of these super fit dudes, and trying to think about how we design things that work for other people, because we all have blind spots. And to do great design work and to make awesome bikes for everybody, we need to pay more attention to getting those people to the table to talk with us, to ride test for us. Let's get some people who are 5'1" and have them on the extra smalls and see if it works, you know. And we need all of that input in order to make this entire community and this entire sport more available to people. I had a great argument recently, actually. This is my pet subject. I could talk about fit all day. But I got into a conversation with someone who says, well, I don't think we're going to make the smaller end sizes of this bike because because we can't make that fit well and perform with 700C, you know, wheels on it for small people, toe overlap, blah, blah, blah. There's reasons you can't do it. And we can't find the right tires to spec for a smaller wheel size. I said, time out. We're deciding who can fit and ride our bikes based on whether or not there's a tire. And I said, we're going to make a tire. We can do that. We have a tire company in this building. Let's figure it out. But it's just funny the different roadblocks there are that people will just breeze on by if they don't have different perspectives in the room. And the other thing I think about with bodies is it's really important, you know, in environments when we're working with young women or with other women who are grown or girls, to think about how we're talking about bodies. I feel really sensitive to that. And I notice that people will comment on women's bodies and feel like they have a license to comment on women's bodies in a way that they don't feel they can talk about men's bodies. And, you know, there's been a lot of interesting stuff published in sport about how women are pressured to lose weight when they're athletes, even though that may not be something that actually improves their performance. But there is a pressure put on women to drop weight in a way that I don't think is really put on men. And there's just a way or the thing about the thighs, good Lord, that was very upsetting. And I just am horrified. And like, bodies are a whole thing. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit on this. We got on a good subject I like. Yeah, I just think anything we can do to make people free to be themselves. I love hearing about that. I think that's so cool, and that's an amazing opportunity we have in our industry and in our sport to help people find a place to be themselves. That's so rare and that is so special. And I loved hearing from Martha how they're doing that. It's really exciting. So I guess just a few things to think about with positive leadership. I really appreciate my current leaders at Q because I know that they have my back. You know, I will have encounters with other people at work that can be frustrating or there can be microaggressions, but I do know that if I go and talk to my supervisors about it, they will back me up and they will listen to me and understand and believe me. And it is hard to express how much I can tolerate from the wide world if I have people close to me who have my back. And that's not something I had in my previous organizations. And I had brought things up and I was told by a woman in HR, no, that is not happening. We don't have sexism here. And it's like, well, I just told you it happened. What do you mean it's not happening? So that environment of not believing people and disregarding their experiences is really damaging. So I'm glad that I have backup now and that I have people who, you know, believe in what I'm doing. Yeah, so I guess I don't have a whole lot else that I need to say. If we want to open it up to questions or
No,
anything else.
that's great. We are so incredibly lucky to have you at Q and all of the wonderful work that you're doing and that different perspective that you're bringing in. So thank you for everything that you do, Ariel, and for sharing your time with us tonight. I think Josh wanted to pop in and say something real quick before we open it up for Q&A.
Well, yeah, and first off, Ariel, Martha, and Lisa, thank you again for coming out and speaking tonight. And when we think about impacts, I think this is really important because this is a personal story of mine about impact. And Lisa, a number of years ago, I actually worked with her in a past life. And at the time, you were heavily involved with TC Beeson. I don't know if you remember this. And she literally said to me, if you care about something, you should volunteer and you should try to make positive change. And so because of Lisa's pestering, and I jokingly say that with love and affection, I joined the MORC Board of Directors, which is the Minnesota Off-Road Cyclist Group, because we all wanted to gain and maintain more mountain bike trails within the Twin Cities. And it was at that time that we saw a gap in trying to get more kids on bikes. And that was when I started working with Gary Soquist. We got Libby Hurley and Mark Hartney. And that was the genesis of how the Minnesota High School Cycling League was founded. And I'm not saying that the organization wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Lisa telling me that I should get involved. But I will tell you that the reason I got involved, which led to a conversation with Gary Soquist, the board president, that came because of Lisa. And so never underestimate the impact that you have on people. And so I just wanted to share that quick story with everyone because still to this day, I thank you, Lisa, for all that you did. And Martha, you misspoke in your days. I think we started working together on this in 2011 and 2012, not 2015. And so it's been a pleasure. So anyways, I'm done. I'll shut up, but thank you for giving my quick little minute.
Thanks,
Yep,
Josh.
no problem, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Those are kind words.
All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Elizabeth. Anything coming through on the chat feed?
There's no questions in the chat, but if anyone would like to look into women's rides, they should check out the chat because there's information about that there.
Excellent. All right, well, if anybody has any questions, we'll go ahead and hang out for a minute or two. You can just unmute yourselves and ask or throw it in the chat. But while we're waiting, it looks like this does look very interesting. I like the acronym. Wow, Women on Wheels.
Hey, Ariel,
So,
you talked before about trying to help your tall, fit coworkers feel what it's like to have a different body. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, I haven't done this yet, but I was talking to some of my colleagues about, center of gravity and women carry their weight lower in many cases. At least I do. And I've just been thinking, like, to really drive this home to people that it's actually different. I should be like getting a weight belt or like some fanny packs with some weights on it for these guys, so just shift them around. I think it would be a fun experiment. This would be a team building day.
You have to do that and report back. I want to hear it.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions or comments, we can go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much to our panelists and to my co-hosts for doing this tonight, for sharing your time with us. This has been fantastic. It's been an awesome month. Thank you, Josh, for helping me get this off the ground. It's been a ton of fun. I've met a lot of people and had a lot of really awesome conversations. So I hope to ride with you all soon, and yeah, get out and enjoy the nice weather.
Thanks for doing this, Katrina.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.